Welcome to the European CME Forum podcast. The European CME Forum is a not-for-profit organisation that promotes multi-channel discussion on matters relating to European and global CME CPD. My name is Eugene Pozniak. I'm the Programme Director of European CME Forum. Now, the 17th Annual European CME Forum took place 6th to the 8th of November 2024 in Madrid, Spain. The theme of the meeting was Tomorrow's World Today, which we addressed in three parts to include GenAI and digital innovations, Thriving Today, Anticipating Tomorrow, and finally, Tomorrow's World Today. To kick off what will surely be another eventful year in CME CPD, we've put together 3 podcast episodes with some of our highlights from 17ECF. In this first episode, we will showcase insights on GenAI and digital innovations that were shared by our European and global education experts. One of the key themes of this year's meeting was the use of AI in CME CPD and in healthcare. In our first clip, Michelle Skidmore of Kaplan discusses ethical considerations in generative AI and the AI position statement from the Alliance of Continuing Education in the Health Professions.
So generative AI really allows you to take all sorts of different inputs from the large language models and creating something new. But there's a couple things that we need to talk about that have come up in several conversations that I've had over the past couple years. And the first is the training of the large language models. There is still a lot of concern about how these models were trained. They were trained by using the web and used a lot of copyrighted information in training the models. There's lawsuits that are ongoing, and it's important to understand that going in to using it. Additionally, there's bias because of the way it was trained. There's inherent bias. There's bias in everything that we do. Even the best chefs have personal preferences on what ingredients that they want to use, and the same happens with generative AI. So kind of think of it as a chef that only likes to use one type of cuisine. And so when you're inputting your prompts into generative AI's tools, you need to make sure that you are accounting for that potential bias. Otherwise, you're only going to get out what you put in. And so if you put in biased prompts, you are going to get biased information back. Also, AI tools are prone to hallucination. They make up research articles. They make up web addresses. They make up all sorts of things. And so you have to be cautious when using those kinds of tools to double check all of your work. And so that kind of brings us to the position statement. So the Alliance created an AI task force that I took over in June as the chair. I have a great task force, members on my task force, but we had a couple goals in mind. It not only was it just putting out a position statement to be somewhat of a leader in how to use AI in the CPD space, but also how to help the members of the Alliance in the profession moving forward. So how do people that maybe aren't as adept at using generative AI as most people in this room, how can they start to use it, not be afraid, and move that forward? I couldn't have a task force without recognizing everybody on this task force. It's great because almost every member section is represented on this task force. The only member section of the Alliance that is not represented would be the Federal Employees Task Force, or the Federal Employees Member Section. Otherwise, every member section group is represented. We did that intentionally to make sure that we had voices from every member section and that we could incorporate that, which really makes for interesting meetings, by the way. And the intent was to really highlight the fact that this is an emerging technology. We don't know what this is going to look like in 2 months, let alone in a year. And so this is going to be a document that is adjusted over time and addressed and revisited every quarter. So as the task force continues, we'll come back, we'll revisit the statement, and we'll make changes as needed. it is and will continue to be a living, breathing document.
Michelle also shared some insights into prompt engineering for AI communication.
For example, you can ask it to help you become a professional DJ, a famous professional DJ, in 90 days. And it will lay out everything that you need to do day by day for the next 90 days. And so how do you get that kind of information out of it? So you want to not be ambiguous. You don't just want to be a DJ. You want to be a famous DJ. And for those of that you don't know, my husband is actually a DJ. And you want to provide context, right? So where are you starting from? Where do you want to go? And structure a prompt. And then you want to give the AI tool a role. You want to say, hey, you're my life coach. Hey, you too are a famous DJ, and I want to be like you. And so being specific on what you want the AI tool to be, and then as with anything, you need to get the information, evaluate it, and make adjustments. Rarely are you going to get it right on the first prompt.
Next, Stuart Crayford of Answers in CME discusses his workshop, Leveraging AI Throughout the CME CPD Development Continuum, when, how, and why to use it, with Dean Jenkins.
Okay, so if you remember, Sven and I did, we were going to do a workshop. We kind of ran out of a little bit of time, so it was more didactic based, but we did get some really good feedback. And it was about practical application of chatbots throughout the content development continuum for medical education. So I'm a content developer. I use chatbots more or less every day to help develop my content. So we had two learning objectives. The first one was how can we use chatbots to accelerate and optimize our content development? And the second one was refining and optimizing our prompts. Now, prompts are the information we put into chatbots to ensure we get the correct output. So I gave some practical examples from analyzing uploaded documents, generating text tables and graphics from images, and then analyzing big data, our outcomes, when we have lots of different comments, putting them into groups, and seeing what those gaps are that clinicians are telling us. But it saves us cognitively looking at all this information, and really it frees up more time. I used one example where it would take me a morning to review some guidelines. Now I can do the same thing in half an hour. But the one thing I would say, and the one thing that we always do in medical education, we always fact check, we reference check, we use multiple sources. And that's what we still do with chatbots. Even though it's given us an answer, I mean, we never trust it. We always know. This is going out to physicians and doctors. Are you giving the right doses? Are you giving the right information? You have to make sure that it's accurate. And yeah, chatbots are good, but they're never going to replace our human eyes and fact checkers. We got some good comments, mainly about copyright law, which we don't have the answers to yet. We know that there are some trials going on and some class action lawsuits that have been taken by different publishers. I don't know if Elsevier's involved yet. I think. What was it, the New York Times? Someone told me. Yeah. New York Times? Yeah. So we will have to watch it closely. So I don't have an answer for that. And until we do, I guess we use chatbots for content development until we're told otherwise.
How did you're obviously using this really well for your work and sharing it with us as well. How did you start? How did you first learn about chatbots? What was it that got you into it?
I think it was trial and error, and it was the shiny new toy that we could use a couple of years ago. And someone suggested it, and I felt a bit silly. I didn't know what it was, and they said, "Oh, ChatGPT," and then I kept hearing it. Mm-hmm. A bit like Paddle. I'd never really heard of the sport paddle. And now all my friends keep talking about, oh, let's go and play paddle. And so I don't know what
This isn't
paddle is.
pickleball.
No, different.
I heard about pickleball yesterday as well.
There you go.
Right.
Paddle
Okay.
and pickleball.
Shiny new toys.
Yeah. So it's just becoming more mainstream. And I feel it's one of those tools that you can pick up. And then you wonder why you didn't have it before. Kind of a bit like the internet or text messaging or WhatsApp. One of those things that you hear about and then you think you'll try it. And then you do, and then you don't go back. You've opened that Pandora's box.
We also heard more about the workshop, Digital Developments in CME CPD, Balancing Learner Needs with Accreditor and Supporter Requirements, from Monica Ghidinelli of AO Foundation.
Our workshop was mainly a discussion around 3 topics. Of course, the use of digital transformation, the use of digital resources, and how this affected the learner. So we started with that, and basically from the discussion, it seems that the learner didn't change that much, but it's the environment in which they are that has been changing. However, there are few points that were coming out. So we know that the attention span decreased. There is an overload as never before of information, so it's very difficult. The learner is really selective, has been always selective in the information that they are choosing to learn. However, now maybe the digital tools will help them to, and also the provider, to direct better what is needed for the learner in that moment, because there is too much out there. And we also touch on the different career stages. So it's not really the age, but it's also the career stage that is influencing the way in which they take the education. And we also touch on the, because on the source of the information that we are sharing. So we touch on that, that also the accreditor will ask more, where is this information coming from? So the trust for what we are sharing with the healthcare professional. And then we talked about, of course, also the fact that the environment has been more complex. The guidelines are more complex. So it's really, time is decreasing for healthcare professionals, and they want short, very targeted education. So as a provider, we discuss different ways in which we still have the traditional way of delivering, because in some cases that is still the best way. A lecture is still the best way to deliver certain content. However, there are different ways. So we discuss about also having, for example, fact sheets where there are the main takeaway from a session of 1 hour webinar, right? So you have these fact sheets, so you can provide the same information in different formats. And then we discuss about outcomes. So, and the fact that the supporter is asking for high level of outcomes. So if we refer to Moore's scale, to 5, above 5, and this is not always the case when we deliver education, especially when we have short education, like 5 minutes, 3 minutes of education. So we discuss about the fact that the supporter is really strict on certain rules when they have an RFP, and then when you report back, they have like they have a space for pre and post tests. But for a 5 minutes education, it's impossible to have a pre-post test. How many are going to fill that out? So we discussed few alternatives to that. And it came out with maybe pre-post test is not always the best way to go. However, there are new technical solutions, and we had one representative from a company that had we can really show dashboards of and real data on how the usage of this material is taken up by the learner. And one other thing, we always think that our education, so it's expected that our education will influence and the healthcare professional will make a change. However, it is true that in the change theory, not always you have a change. You have, for example, the contemplation phase. So we cannot always expect that there is an actual change in the practice, but we can still hope for it.
We then heard an overview of the workshop, Maximising the Potential of Outcomes via Technology, Preparing for the Future whilst Embracing the Power of Now, from Pan Chen of Peer Voice.
We started the session by asking the question about what's next for outcomes. So I believe everyone would agree that we have made so much progress in the last few years in terms of how we measure and track outcomes. In the past, we only kind of track participation, satisfaction, but now measuring knowledge and competence become the norm. However, I feel we're struggling because we want to do more, we want to do a better job, but where should we go? So there's emphasis right now focusing on measuring higher levels of outcomes in the Morse model. There's more efforts measuring level 5 outcomes, and there's more and more RFP prefer programs with level 6 and 7 outcomes. However, we're struggling because the amount of resources that would take to measure those complex higher level outcomes is huge, and very often we don't have it. So the approach we took may not be the most rigorous. So is there anything else we could do? And that's why we had that session about, there might be a different path you can take, which is maybe think about the data we have right now and see if we can learn from the data and use the data more to inform education. So make data, outcome data, really the center of the education cycle. We started the session by analyzing the gaps, like why we're not there yet, why we're struggling. And we concluded that there are two major barriers. The first thing is we may not have data that is sufficiently actionable, so it may help us demonstrating impact, but not necessarily can help really us to learn or inform education. And the other one is as critical important is we don't make data accessible to the broad team that may benefit from using this data. So very often the outcome data is kind of at the hands of outcome team, but not the other team. So we center our workshop around those two gaps. In the first part of our workshop, we talk about our exploration of whether AI technology such as ChatGPT and Copilot can help us make outcome data more actionable. We did two different tests. The first one is whether it can help us write better, actionable knowledge and competence question. And then the second test is we use it to analyze data, outcome data, to see if it can help us derive some insights from the outcome data. Interestingly, the conclusion in the end is we're not sure we're there yet. We felt it did something that is reasonably well, but also had some concerning errors in its output. So we felt like we may get there one day. We need to keep exploring, but perhaps we should be very cautious when we use those chatbots to do question writing or data analysis. What is interesting is, although we reach a conclusion that is not as positive, encouraging, we actually have had very, very engaging and encouraging conversation with the audience during the part one. And I think when I reflect upon that last night I think one of the primary reasons is people see the true intention we have behind that part one is it's not about the tool you're using, it's really about the goal you're trying to achieve. And people see the emphasis we put into evaluating the quality of the outputs from those chatbots versus just focusing on what it can do to you. And I definitely feel there's a great appreciation among the audience about that. So the part two of the workshop is on an established technology. I do find it's interesting, it's my observation is there's such a kind of hit on AI right now. We focus all our attention on this emerging technology, and we very often forgot there's many other established technology that can also help us achieve our goal. So in part 2, we introduced a tool, a data analytical platform that we rolled out at Peer Voice that really helped increase the data accessibility across all the team, allowing us to put outcomes in the center versus just as a step of the education cycle. So we thought we want to share this tool with the broader community in case they can start to explore it and see how it can help them create an outcome-driven and data-driven organization. It's kind of interesting. So that tool, in case if you don't make it yesterday, that tool is called Tableau, Tableau, if you want to take a look. It's a tool that really kind of have different platform that allow you to build some visual dashboard that is highly interactive so that you can share with your team and they can have data at their fingertip, and that can really help guiding a series of efforts such as question writing, grant writing, or there's some implication for program design as well. My reflection of that session is really interesting to observe that actually fewer people attending the second session versus first one. So my first reflection is I think Eugene made the right decision about asking everyone repeating their session, because I think part of the reason is could be people don't want to just listen to two people talking for the whole 90 minutes. However, I think there's also a possibility is people probably don't see high relevance for technology they have not heard about, or a technology that may take great effort to deploy compared to AI. And then upon further reflection, I found it's interesting, we pretty much did not need any deployments with AI. It's like everyone just jump right into it because it's so accessible, so easy to use. You don't even need training. So that's why we have even more roadblocks in front of us for other more established technology. But I want to be the advocate, say, don't forget there are resources available elsewhere and other resources that is more sophisticated, and don't stop doing it just because it's too difficult. I believe if you try it, if you start with your first steps, you will get there one day. And also a reminder, I think, the future of AI probably is AI integrated with many existing technology. So that's why it's critical important for you to get yourself well adversed with existing technology in preparation for the future AI integration.
This was followed by some words from James Bannister of Peer Voice, who described his workshop, Do AI's Dream of Compliance CME? Developing organizational guidelines for the ethical use of generative AI models in medical education.
So as a reminder of what the session was, this was sort of a group discussion looking at what can we use AI for, what are some of the potential pitfalls, and then how to create some consensus guide rails around how to ensure that it's used appropriately. I believe it was Maureen yesterday who was pointing out, if people do just AI generate proposals or indeed even education, how we kind of lose that trust, and it's potentially a slippery slope towards fully generated everything. So we started the workshop by just looking through how we're currently using AI amongst ourselves and our businesses. A lot of people were using it for, I wouldn't say obvious ones, but the things we all do, like landscape analysis, summarizing documents, that sort of thing. We also had some really interesting, almost unique ways of using it. I believe someone was talking about using it almost as a virtual moderator during live panel discussions to create some canned questions and help guide the discussion. It was really interesting to hear how people are using this. We then also discussed the potential drawbacks from it, so hallucinations being a big factor, some of the ethical issues surrounding not only environmental impact, but also, I think Michelle raised it during yesterday's talk of who actually owns it, if it scrapes all this information of the internet. Is it basically a plagiarism machine? And all of these other additional considerations. But the main bulk of the discussion was, okay, so what guidelines, what guardrails should we implement in our practice. And it was interesting that there were 4 key themes, and annoyingly I left them on a laptop over there, so I'll have to go from memory. But basically, the first one was how to make sure that things are being used appropriately and having safety steps in your organization to make sure that things aren't just generated and they go out and get seen by a learner. One of the ones we suggested was having a very hard stop between an output and an external material. So if you, for example, wanted to summarize a transcript, then give a key summary, making the AI give you bullet points and then taking those bullet points and writing yourself, just to make sure that there is that hard separation for a review step. Some thought that was too extreme, and others suggested alternative review checks and balances. I think one of them was making sure someone else other than the prompter reviews the work, almost like a junior-senior review and approval step, which others agreed was quite a good and elegant way around ensuring you have that safety check. Another key concern was privacy, particularly around IP and learner data. So making sure that when you're using an AI system or tool, you are using a closed instance. Some also recommended having limitations on which tools you can use. So having a company identified, we're a co-pilot company, don't use Gemini, or we're ChatGPT, don't use anything else. So basically making sure data is protected. Thirdly was transparency, so coming up with a specific disclosure statement to acknowledge where GenAI has been used, but not overselling it almost. Not just sort of saying GenAI was used somewhere, I'm not going to say where, and creating that kind of statement to reflect not only was it reviewed by a human, but what type of human reviewed it. So, for example, if you're looking at outcomes data, stating that a senior data scientist has validated the work and that sort of thing. And I forget what the fourth one was. It was, we basically did develop some of these statements where people agreed to or disagreed to an extent. And I went away kind of combine the 2 groups worth of information, and by the end of it, it looked very similar to the Alliance's position statement themselves. So it's more validated that work than created something entirely new. But yeah, it was good to see everyone sort of agreeing on things even in this area.
In our first oral presentation session of the meeting, Nuria Fernandez Roldan of Kennes Group described the use of AI as a tool for healthcare education.
Present my poster, Empathy in Practice, AI as a tool for healthcare education. It's displayed on the other room, so feel free to come and visit me and ask if you have questions. I'm sure you will. Yeah. In 2017, we created the portal, the ATTD Education Portal. So we continue offering lifelong learning opportunities to healthcare professionals. And this way, we have the opportunity to go beyond the Congress, so all the information doesn't stay there in this live event. We continue conversations here through the portal, and it's free. And as I said before, we don't want to stop there, right? On the technical side, we have some issues with AI and technical skills, so we also would like to focus on soft skills. I don't really like this term, soft skills. Why are they called soft skills? Because they are also hard to learn, right? It's not easy. Communication, empathy, compassion, where are the guidelines, right? So the goal here, our activity, we wanted to create an activity to help healthcare practitioners to practice empathy, because we don't really have a place, or you cannot practice empathy in real life conversations, right? So it's not just about what we say, but how we say it. So let's dive in. So have any of you, let's do a quick show of hands. Has any of you have seen this wonderful video by Dr. Brené Brown?
Some of my colleagues, okay, 2 hands, 3 hands, wonderful, great. Well, not many. Well, so you have some home task for today. It's a great video, and she explained it beautifully. Because do you think there's, again, another show of hands, do you think there's a big difference between empathy and sympathy? Or are they quite similar? What do you think? Are different? There's a big difference? Yeah, okay, thank you for the 2 hands. I got your answers, I can read your lips, okay. Well, yeah, so there's a big difference, right? And as I said, Brené Brown explained this beautifully. Empathy is when you are feeling with someone, right? Empathy is about connection, and while sympathy is feeling for someone. So let's go and see let's contrast these two terms. So in empathy, it fuels connection, while in sympathy, it drives this connection. With empathy, let's imagine I'm in a dark tunnel, and you will say, I feel how you feel. I'm here with you, and I'm going through the whole process with you. And in sympathy, you will say, well, at least you are here in the tunnel. You want a sandwich? Right? So it's not the same thing. There's a big difference. In empathy, you are not alone, and it involves perspective taking and staying out of judgment. And that's something very difficult because we all love to judge, right? It's one of our main hobbies here in Spain, at least. And in sympathy, on the other hand, well, you will say, that sounds tough. Let's say I'm married and I see how my marriage is falling apart after so many years, and then you say, well, at least you're married, right? There's a big difference. While if you're feeling empathetic, you will say, well, I will go through the whole process with you. I know it's going to be tough, but we are here in this together. So the main difference is in sympathy, you always try to give a silver lining, right? It's always the good side on the problem. So yeah, we're going to focus on empathy today, and how are we going? Yeah, so for healthcare practitioners, that connection, if they are connected to their patients, that makes the whole difference, right? It's not the same. We always complain, I don't know the other situations in other countries. I hear with some of my colleagues about Romania and so on the US maybe, that for a doctor it takes 20 minutes and hey, bye, it's done. You are just a number, right? And we all need to feel that connection with a patient. So the objective here was clear. Why are we here today? Any ideas? I know it's a difficult question. It's 3 p.m. We all need a nap. Why are we here? Well, the objective here, why are we here? Why are we all working in medical education? At the end, it's to improve patients' lives, right? That's the why that drives us. That's why we want to improve not only education, but patients' life, right? So we decided to create a tool, an activity, to practice, as I said, empathetic, non-judgmental conversations. And we wanted to harness AI to do it, and emotional recognition, creating a unique way to practice this skill that, as we prove, is so difficult. It's not that soft. It's quite difficult to improve, right? So let's see how we created the activity. So we decided to design the simulation, the interaction. We started by bringing together a group of key opinion leaders and subject matter experts to decide on the format and the learning objectives, the goals, the outcomes, all that we have previously talked in the previous sessions this morning. And we created this patient, this virtual patient, let's say, but she's not virtual. She's not an avatar. She's not text. She's a person. She's a real person. She's an actress to give more authenticity to the activity. So she's Lucy, and she's managing diabetes. She's a mother of 2, which is a hard task already. And she has some mental health issues as well. And she's also having issues with health weight, okay? So once you are in the activity, as you can see in the picture, you will be talking to Lucy. It's quite short, it's just about 15 minutes. And the AI will track your responses and provides feedback based on your responses. And it's not just about your face, but it's about your tone, the words that you're using. You will receive information about everything that you are doing during the conversation. So once you are in the activity, if you try it later, you will see yourself that you want to access to Lucy, right? Find her direction and say, Lucy, you are having like a hard time. I want to give you a hug. You need some help, right? And as I said, she's a real person. It's not an avatar or text. So what is unique here are the results that we get. We are getting, at the end, personalized feedback. AI listens to your responses and identifies the areas where you might come across as judgmental or lacking empathy. So as you can see, the lady before that was using the activity, she wasn't doing really well. Her attentiveness was not that good. Her energy was not too positive. She had a low energy. Where there are some dominant emotions that AI could see, as serious, polite, confident, worried. So it's not just about saying the right words, but it's about tone, word choice, and emotional cues. So it's like having a conversation coach, but it's 24/7 available and doesn't need coffee breaks. So one of the great things about this tool is also that it's designed as a reflective learning environment. And the idea here is simple. The more you reflect, the more you learn. So as much as you practice, you will improve. And practitioners aren't just given a score or a right or wrong answer. It's not, this is correct or this is not correct. It's just a combination of suggestions from AI, and you are encouraged to think, to reflect, and improve your performance. So it's a safe space to practice, which is something we rarely get in real life. So what's the impact here? What's the impact? What do we get? Well, as I said, AI analyzes the language patterns you are using to improve empathy and emotional cues to help you build a stronger, more empathetic communication skills. And the goal is for these skills to translate into better patient engagement. So it's proof that when anyone, not only, I don't like to focus only on ACPs because anyone can improve empathy in real life. So when you communicate with empathy, in this case, in healthcare, it reduces stigma, it builds trust, and it leads to better health outcomes for patients. And on the other hand, when patients feel heard and respected, they are more likely to actively engage in their own care. So in the end, this project is not just about AI or is about empathy. It's about what I think, as it's only my first time, but I think it's what we do here. It's about connection. So we all want to connect and reach a deeper level. So if we help with this tool, healthcare professionals to reach a deeper level of understanding of their patients, then we will be doing a big impact on healthcare.
In our final clip today, Ben Gallardo of EPG Health provides an overview of the post-COVID-19 pandemic trends in medical congress engagement and digital CME implications.
So, as I'm sure you're all aware, the COVID-19 pandemic massively affected Congress attendance. 2 years of no in-person attendance, but virtual attendance options, and then a return to in-person following the pandemic, and a hybrid model developing after that. And this situation, to us, raised some questions as a company that's interested in facilitating expanded accessibility to Congress materials. How many congresses do healthcare professionals tend to attend every year? And how has this changed or evolved since the pandemic? What is the demand for in-person attendance versus virtual attendance? And finally, how do we derive CME outcomes, CME benefits based on Congress content, be it with the societies, the congresses themselves, or via third-party Congress coverage, be it news, highlights, symposia, or other models. So this is what we dove into. So taking 7 of the big European medical societies, all listed here, we looked at the reported numbers from the society websites listed in the references on attendance from 2018 through 2024 in 3 kinds of buckets, which is a consistent color coding throughout these slides. In-person Congress data in the black, virtual Congress data in the green, and hybrid Congress data if it didn't separate out in-person and virtual in the purple. But now we look at the demand. And this is where EPG Health, who I work for, has done very useful market surveys on HCP content engagement, content consumption. And this is from our 2023 survey. The demand post-pandemic, so we asked these questions in 2023, you had only 27% reporting a lower demand for in-person Congress attendance, 42% similar demand following pandemic, so the pandemic didn't change, and then 26% for a higher demand, saying I want to go to more in-person congresses following the pandemic, but then massive higher demand for virtual Congress content following the pandemic. And then to get at the question of how many congresses do you actually go to, 1 to 2 congresses a year, the majority of those fall into that category for in-person, but then the majority or plurality fall into the 3 to 5 virtual congresses a year, smaller numbers for 6 to 10 congresses, and even a few said I go to over 10 congresses a year, much more of those virtual than in-person. And how you go to 10 in-person congresses a year is beyond me. We actually split this out by region too. We didn't go much more granular than broad regional trends. But an interesting point here is for the North American congresses, vast majority go to 1 to 2 in-person congresses a year, and similarly 1 to 2 virtual congresses per year. The Europeans fall into a much higher category. Maybe that's a benefit of maybe shorter travel times around Europe, but a majority and a plurality in Europe go to 3 to 5 in-person and virtual congresses a year. And then for our colleagues in Asia, much higher number of 1 to 2 in-person congresses, but more appetite for virtual congresses. This, I think, is the key figure. This is an estimate of the overall Congress attendance to those 7 key society congresses from 2018 to 2019. And the trends on here show about a 9% full timeline growth, which is year-over-year growth of 1 to 2%. So overall attendance to these congresses is increasing year over year throughout this timeline, with the massive exception of 2020, when you had a huge jump in virtual Congress attendance, which was the only option, but several of these societies made virtual attendance free of charge that year. And finally, CME implications. So with the various societies with whom I'd love to speak, if you're from a medical society, I'm probably going to come find you, or please come find me. I'd love to talk about the implications of this. But we always try to do pre-post testing on our Congress coverage. What do you know about the various facts that we're about to produce in an article or that come out in an expert interview? And then post-consumption, do you get those questions more correctly? And conclusions. So the pandemic initially generated a massive demand for the only option, virtual Congress attendance. And then this went way down per the Congress numbers in 2022 and 24 when in-person attendance became available again. Our surveyed HCPs said that they attend, on average, 2 in-person and 3 virtual congresses per year, but 1/4 of HCPs attend 6 or more virtual congresses per year. Traffic to our platform of digital or virtual Congress coverage, it remained high through the post-pandemic period, and measurements of knowledge gain, intent to change practice, these are feasible, and they do correspond to surveyed HCP willingness to participate in such measures. So what's the conclusion, main conclusion? There's, I think, a potential here for collaboration to find a sweet spot of accessibility to virtual Congress materials without reducing or even perhaps enhancing in-person Congress attention.
We hope you enjoyed these select highlights on GenAI and digital innovations from 17ECF. Registered participants of 17ECF have exclusive access to recordings from the meeting sessions. Additional meeting materials from 17ECF, however, and other past meetings of CME Forum are freely available by registering on our website, cmeforum.org, and logging into your account. Tune in next time for part 2, where we will share further highlights from 17 ECF about thriving today and anticipating tomorrow. Thank you for listening, and join us for more episodes as we explore all things CME CPD.